Most cavalry tactics sound powerful, but in Warhammer 3, many of them fail when you actually need them the most. Not because you're using them wrong, but because the game often doesn't allow them. So here are cavalry tactics that don't always work, and the ones that always give value. Tactics like hammer and anvil, flanking, rear or shock charging in Warhammer 3 do not work in many scenarios. You can hammer and anvil Tamarkan with Tsar Guard and Griffin Legion, and you will still lose both units to him. All of these tactics mostly rely on breaking enemy's unit leadership, which is not always an option. Many units in the game are just unbreakable, or have such a high leadership that even combined rear and double flank charge will not break them, especially on Legendary with very hard battles, where AI gets leadership cheats. Getting a flank or rear charge will allow your unit to hit easier, but even then it is not always a good tactic. Cavalry knocks down infantry-sized models on charge, which actually makes them immune to damage until they stand up, and in the meantime you are losing charge bonus. And if you charge into single entity, you might just lose that combat, depending on what the target was. So it's not that those tactics are bad, but they are heavily dependent on the target, their strength and strength of the charging unit, and less on tactic itself. So you're not failing the tactic is failing you. Another problem cavalry face, whether it's charging into enemy flank or front, is that models will get stuck into combat. Even a single model that penetrates too deep into enemy formation can slow down cavalry retreat. So tactics like cycle charging, hit and run harassment, overrun, and even breakthrough with wedge formation are therefore very unreliable, and they are mostly depending on unit's mass. You can do everything right and still get punished. It's definitely possible to pull them off, but they require extreme attention over one unit and precise micro, something you might not always have time for during complex battles with multiple more important things developing across the battlefield. And speaking of battlefields, most maps in Warhammer 3 are so small that they heavily limit some of tactics cavalry is traditionally known for. In many battles where those tactics would be important to use, like when you face stronger or numerically superior enemy army, their units will cover battlefield from one edge to another, preventing you from getting behind their lines. So Encirclement, Pincer maneuver, and Backline Harassing all require a lot of space to reliably execute. And the problem is, in many cases you will not have the space you need. Not to mention that many battles are also sieges where those tactics are almost impossible to pull off. Sometimes the correct play simply isn't available. However, if the map and enemy allows it, those tactics can easily decide the battle. Clearing out the enemy backline early, or just shutting down missile units, will quickly swing the battle, even against overwhelming odds. So, most cavalry tactics depend on things you do not control: leadership, pathing, or the map. But, if these do not always work, which cavalry tactics are most reliable? So there are 7 cavalry tactics that consistently work in Warhammer 3. These are the tactics that don't depend on luck, map, or pathing. The first one is called screening. Once the battle starts, the AI will choose targets for its units depending on combat power and value it can get from engagements. That's why it tries to get into your artillery in the back line with its fast units. But if there is a closer, isolated unit nearby, or a target that threatens its valuable units, it will send some forces after it, ignoring softer targets. For instance, if you move your cavalry close to its missile units, it will also bring other melee or anti-large units to defend them. Therefore, you can control the battle just by moving units around the map, even without engaging. And the biggest strength of cavalry is that they are fast, which allows them to choose positioning on the map. The primary purpose of screening is to delay or harass enemy advancement without getting decisively engaged, and it can win battles before they even start. Using screening, you can split enemy forces across the map, but also slow down enemy approach, protect your flanks or weak units, stop the AI from chasing your units, etc. It's both push and pull factor at the same time. It is so effective that sometimes this happens, and the AI just cannot decide what to do. But the control doesn't end there, and you can also use cavalry to prevent enemy charges, a tactic AI often uses with its cavalry. This is called intercepting. The Cav not only has speed to catch most units, it also has mass to prevent them from leaving combat. Intercepting is tactic where you engage enemy to neutralize threats before they reach their target. This is a defensive tactic through offense that can save your army in a clutch situation. In this scenario, cavalry acts like a mobile anvil rather than hammer, locking down in melee enemy units before they reach your line. With proper positioning and movement, you can pull off some very valuable tactics to create fights you can actually win. Feigned retreat is a military tactic where an army simulates panic and flees. It's designed to bait enemy units out of position before launching a counterattack. Using feint retreat in Warhammer 3, you can bait fast enemy units into bad position, where you can isolate them and quickly take them out, either by setting a trap or dragging them to your missile units. This, however, works the best if AI units actually have a chance to catch your bait, therefore it will rarely send infantry to chase after cavalry, but it will chase with its own cavalry or flyers. There is also a variation of same tactic. The feint or mock attack means you fake a charge to force the enemy to stop or turn. With feint charge, you can manipulate any unit and make it change the direction or stop the charge. You do not commit a unit to melee combat, but for a brief period you threaten enemy unit as if you plan to do it. This threat of possible incoming charge is what will make AI unit to change its ongoing task. Faking charges will not completely stop the AI, but it will delay it for a while and buy you enough time to prepare for it, and you decide when and how the fight happens, and not the enemy. Missile Cavalry Skirmish is a tactic where you deal damage from distance while forcing the enemy to move while avoiding melee combat. It works the same way as feint tactics, except you actively do damage while manipulating enemy movement. Both Kite and Circle and Shoot, also known as Cantabrian Circle, fall into this category, and it's devastating if you specialize army for it and the AI doesn't have tools to stop it, like missile units. This is the primary tactic behind any fast-ranged armies, like missile cavalry stacks. There is also a tactic that will help you in follow-up battles rather than current one. Pursuit is a tactic to finish the enemy army after the battle is already won. Pursuing routing units and killing as much enemies as you can is one of the best value any cavalry can provide in Warhammer 3. By doing this, especially after winning the battle, you reduce size of enemy army and make next fight much easier. This is what turns one win into campaign momentum. However, this is only relevant if there is follow-up battle, so any battles other than when you are attacking a settlement or an army in a forced march. And if you want to see why Missile Cavalry Skirmish tactic is so powerful, watch this video next. See ya!